One of the strategies metrics is Bitcoin yield generated, right? And that's basically using the Bitcoin they have to get more Bitcoin. And I think it's something like 100% yield or something like that. So do you want 9 or 100? I think it's better to do what he's doing now. And you can do that as long as the fiat money printing system exists. You're basically harnessing that and turning it into Bitcoin. But when there is no more fiat someday, then probably yes, putting it into a Lightning node and routing payments could be a way to keep generating more Bitcoin. If you look at it, a lot of Bitcoiners probably came for Bitcoin gains back in the day. And then they went down the rabbit hole later on and understood, okay, it's a bearer asset. It's a way to protect my sovereignty, and it's insurance. So it's not necessarily bad that people are buying these stocks that have Bitcoin in them if they learn about Bitcoin. And not all of them will, but some of them will.
How do you see the evolution of shitcoinery, and what was it like in each of those eras?
Well, I would say the early stage of shitcoinery, there was a lot more effort into things, right? So it just kind of degenerates over time like everything else. But the first batch, they try to be more like Bitcoin. They're all mostly proof of work coins. Even Ethereum was a proof of work coin, right? So you want to mirror Bitcoin as much as possible with a differentiator, like Bitcoin with smart contracts. That's Ethereum's pitch, right?
Bitcoin, but cheaper transactions or faster transactions.
Yeah,
that sort of
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's a proof of work element, right? Then you have the next generation, which figured, well, that's actually hard work. And the proof of work can be used as a critique. Because if you have low proof of work and no one's mining it, then it doesn't look good. So then you move into things like proof of stake. And you have a proliferation of proof of stake systems like Tron, like it fits into that category, and other ones too. And then you degenerate even more into just meme coins. Now it's not even like it's a network and it's a protocol. Now it's a meme coin. And that's good enough.
Yeah.
We have a great community. Buy it. And now I don't know what it is, but you can see it just loses effort with every successive iteration of it. Because it gets easier and easier. Now it doesn't matter. Like people are happy. Yeah, well, some people are saying like Solana is more honest than Ethereum, right? It's just that we're centralized, but Ethereum likes to pretend they're decentralized.
Are they still doing that?
Well, you ask.
So
ask Vitalik.
Am I misreading Vitalik in thinking he's having not in second thoughts, like third and fourth thoughts about all the things like unwinding proof of work or abandoning proof of work and moving to proof of stake? It seems like he's equivocating on that and perhaps lamenting his decision to do that.
You think so? I haven't seen that.
No? Maybe I'm misreading him.
I don't follow him that much. Other than
he seems, I think since the bear market, he just seems to be in this kind of existential daze about Ethereum. You don't sense that?
I don't follow him that closely.
I don't follow him closely either, but every time he pops his head up on a timeline, which is not very often, he makes it onto mine, right? And so I'm like, this is not the guy, he doesn't speak with courage and, not courage, yeah, the courage of his convictions with any kind of defined direction and purpose for Ethereum. Like, at least he used to once. You didn't have to believe what he said, but he used to speak that way as a kind of thought leader. And this is where we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. This is where we're taking it. And I'm like, I don't see that anymore from him.
Maybe so, but I remember the last time he popped up on my timeline was when he sort of took control of Ethereum Foundation and said, I'm running this now. So he's still involved, but I think their whole narrative is crumbling, especially with the drop in price against Bitcoin, right? They're just unable to hold their own against Bitcoin. And that is probably the most, the biggest weakness of the thing right now. Because they were always supposed to be better. And they marketed it that way, you pushed it that way, but now evidence shows you're not better. And these other things, seemingly like Solana, are overtaking for being better at being Ethereum than Ethereum is.
So what did they try to do? At first they said, we're kind of like Bitcoin, but better, faster, more efficient, whatever. And then it turned out to be really expensive, much slower, much more cumbersome.
At the very, very, very first, they said, we can't compete with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is number one.
Oh, did they? Okay.
We're going to try to do something different with smart contracts.
Yeah.
And then after they finished their ICO and they had money, that was when the narrative changed and they started pushing the whole thing like we were better than Bitcoin. And you got the whole flippening narrative that we're going to flip Bitcoin's market cap.
So Solana doesn't pretend about competing on decentralization. They said we're centralized.
I don't know if they say it, but it's obvious that it's centralized.
Right.
They don't really...
They switch it on and off for the God.
Yeah.
For the love of God. They switch it on and off, literally, right? Like if you, like that's literally single point of failure, right? But my point is like, from the people I've spoken to who have used that compared to Ethereum, they're like, well, it just works like it should when it's on. Yeah. Or compared to Ethereum, it's like it's less clunky, it's easy to use, smoother, cheaper, faster, all the rest of that. And it's kind of like Ethereum has been out Ethereum'd by its rival, and it's still nowhere near what it thought it would be as a rival to Bitcoin. And so it's been squeezed at one end, it could never compete with Bitcoin, and on the other, it's been out shitcoined by... And isn't that what we've been saying all along, though? There is no competitive moat to Ethereum, right? Yeah. And so why wouldn't they just be...
Well, there's no... You're always going to have something newer and fresher that's going to try to be Ethereum, right? So that's why you can't really invest in these things, because they're targeting a market of being innovative, and you can always have something more innovative to overtake the last one.
So like Ethereum's always benefited from the investment grade quality of Bitcoin and its market cap. Like no matter if you were a Bitcoiner or not, at each point of every cycle, it was kind of amazing that it was hitting these heights in market capitalization. But what would Ethereum be worth if Bitcoin didn't exist? If it was a standalone, because it would then be priced at what? As like on its commercial metrics, right? So like, I have no idea of what kind of revenue it makes, but would it even be 10% of its current market cap without Bitcoin?
Well, without Bitcoin, it wouldn't exist because it's a copy of Bitcoin in many ways, right? Yeah, it's just the conundrum. Like, you're trying to offer this utility service that's meant to do all these things like computation, but then you also have people speculating on the value of the token, which is the fuel for that computation and transaction engine. So it kind of doesn't work. Either it goes up in value and you can't use it for what it's supposed to be doing, or it can do what it's supposed to do, but it's not going to have value because you can't use it otherwise.
Nation state adoption. What's happening in the world of orange pilling sovereigns?
With the strategic reserve, the executive order for that, and new developments is probably the most interesting aspect of nation-state adoption right now. Mm-hmm. But you do see follow-on with that. Like Pakistan announced that they're setting up their own strategic reserve. They appointed Saylor. I haven't fact-checked that.
I haven't seen anything verified on that.
I've seen it, but I haven't verified it.
Yeah.
So take that with a grain of salt that he's their advisor now. But it's whether the US makes a big move, like a really tangible move, like passing the Bitcoin Act and actively accumulating Bitcoin, I think that is going to be the next big driver for nation-state adoption. But we'll see like little bits and pieces happening here and there. And we do have our engagements and we're trying to move things along, but it's difficult. Like if you think of it as a normal person, where does Bitcoin stack up in your attention span in a given day? It's probably like, towards the bottom somewhere. It's the same for countries. Like they're always focused on some higher level drama, like Iran and Israel right now, probably top of mind. But it's difficult to kind of get them to prioritize something. But one silver lining, I think, of the Bitcoin treasury companies is that they're elevating that in the awareness. Like in Japan, we engaged with a number of politicians there. Metaplanet definitely has picked up on all of their radars. You cannot not pick up on Metaplanet.
It's legitimately a big deal in Japan, right?
It is.
I mean, I know we talk about it in our little bubble, and it's easy for us to, I guess, inflate the importance of some of the events that are happening in Bitcoin. But are we talking mainstream finance in Japan, or just the general population?
I would say so. Like it's definitely hitting mainstream financial media, right? Because every day they're gapping up. It's like top volume of all stocks. You cannot ignore this.
And we have an interesting phenomenon. They have an interesting phenomenon in Japan where stock investing, household finances are done by the wife, the woman in the house, right? It's not the man who does it, right?
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting phenomenon. I guess how has Metaplanet, or has it tapped into that aspect of society as well from a retail investor point of view?
I'm not sure, but I just know that there's a ton of retail interest. Like at their shareholder meeting, they held it at the Grand Hyatt, and the lineup to take a photo like out the door, it's a full ballroom, like as big as a conference, as big as many Bitcoin conferences. So you have to at least admire what they've managed to achieve and the level of interest that they've managed to generate for a Bitcoin treasury company.
So are there more, have you heard of any other companies in Japan, given, their history with, their financial history with, I guess, inflation and monetary debasement over 30, 40 years? You would imagine that society would have been looking for something like this for some time in terms of Bitcoin, but now that there's been an established investment vehicle and a demonstrated track record of its success, my guess would be that there would be other companies in Japan lining up to replicate that. Have you heard of? There are?
Yeah, there's a couple. I can't remember the names, but I see like so-and-so company bought 5 million or 3 million. They're popping up now. So it's becoming more of a thing. But you would have thought that Japan would be big into real Bitcoin, like self-custodial Bitcoin. But I think it is difficult still. Like we managed to understand it, but the average person just doesn't want to deal with the hassle of hanging on to Bitcoin, right? It's just a burden that they don't want to deal with.
Fantastic.
I think there's a few barriers. Like one is tax treatment, right? For a lot of countries, if you're spending Bitcoin, technically it's a capital gains taxable event. And that is a barrier. So for Japan, I think that's the case too. So you're kind of disincentivized to dealing with spending Bitcoin. And actually, I met someone in Japan before, and they were saying they're using Aqua Wallet to maintain a separate Bitcoin stack because Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and he can keep it in cold storage, but he'll get liquid Bitcoin, which is not Bitcoin, and he can just expend it and manage that and file his taxes accordingly for each transaction, but not have to interfere with his main stack. So that's an interesting workaround. But what you said earlier is right. Like we need to make more accessible tools and make them so beneficial that you want to have your own Bitcoin in your own wallet so that you can do all these things like pay bills and convert and use it in many beneficial ways in your life. So I think that is one step. But the other aspect of it, I think, is simply just time and learning. It just takes time that people need. They need to understand that they should hold their own assets. And it's a big gap going from your money's in your bank and it's safe, quote unquote, to I need to keep my own money and take responsibility for that completely on my own, 100%. And if it is lost or stolen, it's gone for good. And that chasm is a big chasm. And I don't know if there's a shortcut to get there. And I don't even know if we can fully bridge that just by making better Bitcoin wallets. It just might be a natural phenomenon that takes time. Like one thing I think helped for Canada was when the government declared martial law and started freezing bank accounts. And I think that educated a lot of Canadians into realizing, well, I probably need some insurance in the form of Bitcoin, which cannot be frozen. Because that was unprecedented, but it showed how fragile the traditional system is. Like the government can just say, okay, you're a terrorist now because you donated to this convoy protesting lockdowns and mandated vaccine injections. And that is pretty shocking to most people that in a Western country, liberal democracy, that you can have this type of totalitarian, authoritarian acts happening. And it can happen anywhere. But outside of that, if that didn't happen, I would say a lot of people wouldn't understand that or cross that chasm. But because it happened, they did. So it's almost like you have to have that pain before you'll move out of your comfort zone.